Have you ever been confused about tipping while on safari in Africa? Or is this maybe going to be your first safari and you don't know who or how much to tip? Well, today we're diving into that exact topic, which is tipping etiquette while on a hunting safari in South Africa. So for whatever reason, it's a super taboo subject. It's almost like you need a secret handshake to even talk about the damn thing. But I've been over so many times, I've researched it, I've talked to everybody, so I've finally come up with something that I think works really well and that keeps everybody happy. And believe it or not, understanding how to tip properly can turn a good safari into a trip of a lifetime. You can avoid all the stress associated with tipping, which for a lot of people, it's a big deal. Remember guys, when you're out in the bush chasing African sunsets and all these cool animals, there are a team of drivers, camp staff, trackers, and on behind the scenes working to make sure you have an unforgettable experience. So in my, we'll call it quest for clarity, I've had conversations with several PHs over the years. Unfortunately, those yielded reluctant figures. It felt like they were, kind of made to tell me something that somebody else wanted to. So I don't really use that. Lots of online resources out there, but they're often provided by the outfitters themselves. So those should definitely be approached with caution. There's a lot of forums on the subject, but normally what you get with the forums is people like to use a set 15 to 20% of the total cost of your safari in there. And I don't think that's remotely accurate. And then on top of that, there's a really good thread on africahunting.com, which is very insightful. But the problem is it reflects the hunter's opinion. So amidst the sea of information that's out there, what truly constitutes the correct tipping amount? All right, so let's talk about the big hairy beast in the room first. And that is an old adage that's been floated out there that tipping is not mandatory nor expected. Folks, I'm here to tell you that is an absolute load of horseshit. Sure, tipping's not shoved down your throat like tequila shots at a bachelorette party, but let's cut the crap. It is 100% expected. And let's be real. Anybody that suggests otherwise is about as trustworthy as a politician. Remember, your safari is absolutely part of the service industry, and tipping's not just about tossing a couple of bucks around here and there. It's about acknowledging the blood, sweat, and occasional tears that go into making your safari unforgettable. So while tipping might not be mandatory in a legal sense, it's about as expected as a stripper at a bachelor party, and nobody wants to be the cheapskate in that room. While opinions vary greatly on tipping, I find that a sliding scale approach works really good, and it's very straightforward. So for example, your PH, which is your professional hunter, he is your primary companion throughout the entirety of your safari. You're gonna spend 90+% of your time with this individual. So for a typical plains game hunt, which is going to be your kudu, gemsbuck, impala, blussbuck, warthog, things like that, a tip of between $100 and $150 a day. I would start as $100 bucks a day is your base, go up to $150 for really good service. When it comes to specialty animals like the tiny 10, or you're doing night hunts, or you're doing hunts with dogs where there's a ton of planning involved, preparation, there could even be a bunch of permits involved. For me, I like to tip between $150 and $180 per day for those days that we're chasing those kind of animals. And I feel like your pH is appreciated, and that's a really good number to work from. Now, if you're diving into dangerous game, so dangerous game, they're going to be your Cape buffaloes, your crocs, your hippos, leopards, lions, etc. The stakes are higher, so the tip should be higher too. So I start at $250 per day on a dangerous game hunt, and that number can go up. Remember, folks, there are a ton of people with you on a dangerous game hunt. It's not just you and your PH and your tracker. There's a whole group of people back there making this thing happen. So start at $250 and then go up from there based on the level of service and your experience. All right, so next up, let's talk about trackers and skinners. So these guys, they're going to be with you a ton throughout the trip. They are recovering your game that you shoot, and they are skinning out your trophies. So let us be very clear here. Those guys are super important in that they make sure your taxidermist, when your animals get to them, don't end up looking like a jigsaw puzzle instead of an actual trophy. So for these guys, I like to tip $20 to $30 per day, which I think is pretty much industry standard, but go with $20, $30 a day. If you're venturing into, once again, those specialty animals like the Tiny 10, bump that up to $30 to $50 a day, because frankly, guys, if your skinner is working on, let's say, a steenbuck or a blue dyke or something like that, it takes him 3 times as long to skin that little animal and prep it as it does, let's say, an impala or a blessed buck. So tip accordingly, and those are for those animals and for those days that you're chasing those specialty guys. The other thing is, if you're bagging more animals than a collector at a yard sale, consider tipping per animal rather than per day. I mean, these guys are doing a ton of work, so, reward them for their hard work. So let's talk about drivers and porters. These guys don't get talked about very often, and they are crucial to the process. So what I like to do is tip them $10 to $20 per service day. Now, they're likely only going to work, you're going to see them for the first day that you're coming into camp and the last day when you're leaving camp, unless you have multiple camps during your safari. So $10 to $20 per service day is fine. They're going to be happy with it, and that's just a number that I've come up with over the years that seems to really work good for that. All right, so let's talk about lodge staff. And this can get confusing because there's a lot of people behind the scenes that you might not see. And it's super important to show appreciation to those people in the various roles. So for example, if you find yourself enjoying a drink at the bar, considering tipping the barman between $5 and $10 a day. Now, if your PH is the one making your drinks behind the bar, then don't worry about it. He's already going to be covered in the tip that you're paying him. Additionally, show gratitude to the hardworking room cleaners. That tip should be $10 to $15 a day for keeping your accommodations pristine and your clothes washed and in good repair. There's also a ton of folks in the kitchen staff who are working tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure that you are well fed with delicious meals, and they also deserve recognition. So I would recommend a tip of between $10 to $15 a day for those folks. And then there's a bunch of other staff members behind the scene. There could be hostesses, receptionists, stuff like that. And these are all pooled tips that we're talking about right now. So, for all those other folks that you may not see, just tip $5 to $10 a day for those folks. So at the end of the day, what you're looking at for the entirety of the lodge staff is a tip ranging between $30 and $50 per service day. And that's going to be grouped together, so you don't have to worry about it. So on the low side, 30. On the high side, I'd say $50 for the lodge staff, and that'll keep it taken care of. All right, so I totally glossed over this when we were filming yesterday, and I wanted to go ahead and put it in here. It's something that doesn't come up very often, but it does come up, and that you could very well end up with a person that is a camp manager. This is normally a woman. Don't confuse that person with a hostess. A camp manager is something entirely different, and that's normally the individual that's responsible for every single person at the lodge, the kitchen staff, the bar staff, the wait staff, the cleaning staff, everybody. She is the one making sure that your trip is smooth. You may not know who that person is. So what I suggest is, if you have a question about it, go to your PH and ask them. They are happy to tell you, whether that's a hostess, whether that's an actual camp manager. In the event you do have a camp manager and you can clearly tell that she is working her butt off, tip her. My suggestion is $20 to $30 a day per service day, and that fully takes care of it. So real quick, here's a couple of bonus tips. See what I did there? First, bring a bunch of sealable envelopes with you, and they're for handing out tips at the end of the trip. It keeps the process pretty discreet and well organized. I always grab a handful of these from my bank before I leave to go over. Just a good, easy way of taking care of tips at the end of the trip. Number 2, if you're unsure about who should receive the tips, don't hesitate to ask your PH. They can offer valuable guidance on the proper recipients. In fact, I've had my PH join me several times during the tipping process to ensure that each tip reaches the right hands, and frankly, it makes me feel good to reward those folks for all their hard work. Let's go through the full breakdown now. We're going to start with your professional hunter. If you're hunting specifically plains game, figure $100 to $150 per day. If you're getting after those specialty animals, those are going to be your Tiny 10, your night hunts, your hunts with dogs,
figure $150 to $180 per day. Once you step up to dangerous game, that number starts at $250 a day and goes up from there. Next are your trackers and your skinners. For plains game, figure $20 to $30 per day. You get into those specialty animals again, you're looking at $30 to $50 per day. If you start stacking shit up like cordwood, figure $20 to $30 per animal to keep those guys happy. Your drivers and your porters, figure $10 to $20 per service day. You're likely only going to have one or two of those anyway. Now your lodge staff. So your barman, figure $5 to $10 per day. Your cleaning staff, $10 to $15 per day. Your kitchen staff, $10 to $15 per day. Your hostess and reception staff, $5 to $10 per day. Now your camp manager. For a camp manager, you want to figure $20 to $30 per service day. So if you do this math, on the low side, you come up with $180 per service day over a 7-day safari, gives you a tipping amount of $1,260 US. If you figure on the high side for a plains game package, you're looking at $270 a day or $1,890 for your 7-day safari.
Remember, folks, tipping not only rewards the hard work of your safari team, but also helps sustain local communities involved in the hunting industry. So when you're packing your gear, make sure you include gratitude in your list. If you find yourself watching this video, it's probably because you've already booked a trip to South Africa, and congratulations on that. One thing I will say, you've already got a ton of time, money, energy invested in this trip before you ever step on the plane or step foot in country. So if you're going through all this trouble, please don't go out cheap on tips. Make sure you take care of the individuals that are taking care of you. On the small side, stay to the minimums that I've kind of suggested for you, and everybody's going to be happy with it. If you had exceptional service, bump those up to the higher numbers. But guys, here's the thing. If you're not willing to spend $1,260 in tips on a 7-day safari, then you probably don't need to be going on safari to begin with. But that's just my 2 cents, so take it for whatever it's worth. So guys, let us know about your tipping experiences and whether or not you agree or disagree with our recommendation down in the comments. Well, that's it for today, folks. If you found the guide helpful, give us a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more adventures with Salt Lake Outdoors. And until next time, shoot straight, keep exploring.